Hey guys, today we are looking at some special right triangles. So these are some special cases in which we know specific things about angles in the triangle. So the first one we're going to look at is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. In a 45, 45, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times as long as each leg. So I'm going to show you how we determine this. So if we use what we know how to solve for side lengths, x squared plus x squared equals x radical 2 squared. That should look familiar to you. That's a squared plus b squared equals c squared with our given triangle values of x. So 1x squared plus 1x squared is 2x squared. And over here, if I square these, I get the square root of 2 squared is just 2, and I end up with x squared. So that works. So if you have a side length of x, then the hypotenuse is that value times radical 2. So leg times radical 2 equals hypotenuse. This is a rule that you need to know. Memorize it. You gotta know it. There's no other way around it. So here's how we're going to use it. I shorten that leg radical 2 equals hypotenuse into L radical 2 equals H. So if I know the leg length is 6, I'm going to bring down radical 2, that equals my hypotenuse length. And I'm done there. That's your answer. So if I go over here to B and I write down the same thing, leg times radical 2 equals hypotenuse, I know the leg length is 4 radical 2, and then I'm going to bring down the radical 2 equals the hypotenuse. So now in this case, we're going to multiply the things under the radical. So I'm going to bring down that 4, and then radical 2 times radical 2. So 2 times 2 is 4 equals the hypotenuse. And the square root of 4 is just 2. So 4 times 2 gives us 8. So in this case, the hypotenuse is 8. So another one, for example 2, find the exact value of x. You could use your Pythagorean theorem here, but even easier than that, we're going to use this leg radical 2 equals hypotenuse. So we have leg is x, bring down radical 2 equals, your hypotenuse is listed as 9 radical 2. So then, if I want x by itself, I'm going to divide by radical 2. When I divide by radical 2, the really nice thing is those canceled, and so x is 9. So the leg length here was 9. What I want you to notice about these 45, 45, 90s, the angles, the 45, 45, that's the same. Notice that it forms an isosceles right triangle. Those leg lengths are also the same. That's true for all of those with 45, 45, 90. Okay, so then we also have 30, 60, 90 triangles. So in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse is twice as long as the shorter leg, or 2 times as long, and the longer leg is the square root of 3 times as long as the shorter leg. Let's show that again with our Pythagorean theorem. So if I set this up, one leg is x, I'm going to square that. The other leg is x radical 3, I'm going to square that whole thing, and then the hypotenuse is 2x, I'm going to square that whole thing. So if this is true, then these should equal each other again. So I get x squared. Then I'm going to square all of this. So the square root of 3 squared is just 3. And then we have x squared. equals, now I need to square each of these things. So 2 squared is 4, and then I have x squared. So now I have 1x squared plus 3x squared. We get 4x squared equals 4x squared. That worked. So, our shorthand here, 2 times the shorter leg is equal to the hypotenuse, and shorter leg times radical 3 is equal to the longer leg. Again, you need to have these memorized. So, box them in, make note that it's very important. So now, notice that this one had 2 different equations. There's 2 different sides to solve for since the legs are different sides, or different sizes. So I'm going to write them both down. So 2 times the shorter leg equals the hypotenuse, and the shorter leg times radical 3 equals the longer leg. We'll use both of them to find the unknown value. So the first thing you want to do, think back, we talked about where short leg, long leg goes. So if this is 60, that's 90. This has to be 30. And so the smallest angle is across from the shortest side. So this is the short side. And then across from the 60 is the long leg. And across from the 90 will always be the hypotenuse. So now we're just filling in the pieces. So I'm going to bring down 2. The short leg is 11. So 2 times 11 equals the hypotenuse of x. So then 2 times 11 is 22. So our x value here is 22. Then let's look at this other equation to see if that helps us find our y value. So the short leg again is 11. Bring down radical 3 equals the long leg is y. There's not any work that we have to do there. We have solved for y. Okay, let's try this again. So across from the 30 is the short leg. Across from the 90 is the hypotenuse, which means that that last angle is 60, and the long leg is across from there. So I'm going to write down my 2 equations again. 2 short equals hypotenuse, and short radical 3 equals long. So 2 times the short side equals the hypotenuse. Okay, so now I need to divide by 2 to get y by itself, so y equals 8. Over here, I need the short side, which is y, but I just found that y is 8, so I'm going to go ahead and put an 8 there. I'm going to bring down radical 3, and that equals the long leg of x. All right, let's try another one of these. So I'm going to write the 2 equations again. Well, first I have to look, and I see that it's a 30, 60, 90, so that's the one with the 2 equations. So I use 2 short equals hypotenuse, and short radical 3 equals long. So across from the 30 is the short side, across from the 60 is the long side, across from the 90 is the hypotenuse. So we'll fill in pieces. So 2 times short side is x equals hypotenuse is y. Okay, we're stuck there. We can't go any further. Let's see if we can use the other equation to help us out. So the short side is still x. We bring down radical 3. The long side this time is 8. So now I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by radical 3. So x equals 8 over radical 3. Typically as mathematicians, we don't leave that radical in the denominator, so we need to clear it out of there. And the way to clear it out of there is to not change the answer that we're getting. We want to keep it in the same, we don't want to change the value of the answer. So to do that, I'm going to multiply by a fraction that's equivalent to 1. So 5 over 5 is something equivalent to 1. 7 over 7. Negative 3 over negative 3. In this case, I'm going to multiply by what that denominator is. The square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Now, when you multiply straight across the top. So I have 8 times the square root of 3. That's as simplified as we can get in the numerator right now. Looking at the denominator, I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Well, remember that when we do the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, we multiply those inside numbers. So 3 times 3 would give you 9. So the square root of 9 is what's going to go in there. And then after we put the square root of 9 in there, we know the square root of 9 really is just plain old 3. So we have taken out the square root out of the denominator. Okay, so that's our x value. So we still need to go back and find our y value. So we're going to take that x value and we're going to plug it in here. So 2 times 8 square root of 3 over 3 equals y. And you'll notice I intentionally kept that 2 up top because it's like a fraction of 2 over 1. So when we multiply that 1 times 3, it just is going to stay the 3 on the bottom. We're going to multiply our numbers outside the radical. So 2 times 8 is 16. And then we have radical 3 over 3 equals y. Okay, guys, we'll spend some more time on this in class. If you have questions, please come in and see me. I will see you in class. Have a great day.